Hello, everyone. If you want to know how to go from rejection to redirection so that you can really flourish in life and transition through it, then you're in the absolutely right place. So today I'm joined by the lovely Kimberly Carter, and she's going to talk to you all about that. So welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you, Julie, for having me. I appreciate it so much.
It's good to see
And
you.
this topic is so near and dear to my heart, as I know it is to yours, right? And it's because for the longest, I went through life just as a woman, as an adult, overstaying in rejection, right? And allowing it to shape how I saw myself. It was shaping how I was showing up in spaces like these, in rooms, and it was stamping out my voice, if you will, right? It was causing me to shrink back. And then I started talking to other ladies and women, and I found this was prevalent. It didn't matter race or age, it didn't matter location. And then I needed to explore that. Why are we shrinking back? What about rejection are we taking so personal that we can't see it as redirection? And so that's what led me on my quest to start investigating it. And I started digging through my own life, and I realized that a lot of the traumas I experienced as a young adult in my early 20s, even as a teen in some regards, right, were seeds that were planted that had bloomed, and they were now full-fledged adult blooms telling me to shrink back or thinking that if I tried something that I was going to fail because I had failed before. And so I had to reprogram my mind, my thinking, and I had to redirect it all and see it as redirection. One of the biggest issues that I had in my early 20s was I was fired twice in 1 year. Now, being fired at all can be daunting, right? But being fired twice in the same year made me feel like the biggest failure ever, except when I look back on it, it wasn't a failure. It was a redirection to get on the path I should have been on in the first place. And so it happened because I was trying to walk a path that society, that my family, that even myself thought I should be walking. And it wasn't authentic and true to what I needed to be doing at the time. Back then, I didn't know that. This was probably 2012, 2013. And so I took that being fired as failure. And when I tell you, it started shaping how I showed up. I wouldn't offer any feedback in spaces. I wouldn't, someone could say, "Does anyone know how to?" And I would never say I knew how, even though I had the gift, even though I could speak or I could encourage or I could offer it. That one event just had this ricocheting effect that took me to a very, very dark place. But in that same year that I was fired twice, I started searching for my birth family. I had grown up an adoptee. I didn't know my family for like 30 years, my biological family. And so looking back, I can see that that was a space that was carved out for me to search for my birth family. But at that time, I didn't see it like that. I shrunk, I covered, I cowered. I was just almost in a corner, if you will, just feeling like the biggest failure of life. What changed my mindset on it, though, was once I got past those years, I started realizing that that was that time for me. And I started learning more about affirmations. They didn't work right off, it took time, but I started affirming myself. What led to that was the realization that if I hadn't been fired, I wouldn't have had the space to find my birth family because I just would have been focused on work and life. I was a newlywed at that time, so I just would have been only focused on those things, right? And so taking on that judgment, judging myself harshly because of the opinions of other people was what I had to undo. And so listen, I'm trying to tell your listeners, don't internalize rejection as failure, right? You have to learn to reframe it as divine redirection. We can be on one path, like I said, but if that's not the path we should be on, even if that worked for our families, that could have worked for generations of women in your family. That does not mean that's your path, right? And rejection exposes what's not aligned with you in that moment. because if one door is closed, then that means keep walking and find the next door that's open. And so, an affirmation I would like to leave that I started with you all, I would like to leave it with your audience is I walk in divine direction for my life. I took that affirmation, I put it on sticky notes. I still have that affirmation that'll pop up on my phone, right, as a silent notification. The next thing I had to learn in all of that redirection was that trusting your own timeline for your life is important. How many times do we see people say they're not on time or I should have been here by now? You'll hear a 25-year-old say they should have had like a whole house, three kids, a career, and the perfect life. And you're sitting there like, but my love, what if you don't get there till you're 35? And that is okay. And so, what being fired taught me, what following my path, because again, I had to search for my birth family. That is a very unique path. That was the time that was allotted for my search. Because as soon as I connected with my family, 1 year later, my husband and I relocated out of the state. And so that time, that small window of time, had I not been fired twice, I wouldn't have found them in that way. And I wouldn't have been in my same home state to connect with them where I was from. And so trusting your own timeline is important because if I had been looking or continuing to look at my neighbor's timeline, a friend, what society told me I should be doing, I wouldn't have reconnected to my family, right? I would have kept rejecting the redirection and trying to push my own agenda. And so I'm just saying, it is very important to trust your timeline. This happened to me in college. I did not finish undergrad on time, right? I put that in quotes because on time for my life and on time for the next person's life isn't the same. I ended up going to basic training. I was held back in basic training, so I couldn't pass the run test, right? And they made me stay behind twice. There's twice again, right? And so by the time I finished returning to undergrad, I was late for the semester and they wouldn't let me. I had to sit the semester out. Fast forward, when it was time for me to graduate, I didn't have all my credits. And so I ended up not graduating on time. I ended up working full time, thinking, well, that's the end of college for me. I'll just start my life, right? I'll just work. That's not the case. I worked for a year. I decided that wasn't for me. I went back and I finished college, but it was 2 years after my timeline for finishing. But the day I finished college, I got engaged because it was the same day that my then fiance finished. We actually finished at the exact same time. But in my mind, I had failed. I was behind. I wasn't going to make it. I had all of these thoughts in my head that were not true. And so, what I'm saying is, your timeline is your timeline, right? And it is so hard to ignore people around you, but you have to formulate a way to understand that you are a unique person, having a unique experience, and you're on your own journey, right? You can't look at your peers. You can look to them for encouragement, but you don't need to over compare yourself, right? Social comparison will make you shrink. It'll make you think your life isn't in alignment. You will panic. You won't listen to reason. You'll just melt down thinking you should be somewhere at a certain time, right? An affirmation I want to leave with you all about that is I am on time for my life. And I know it can be hard to think like that. And so, again, programming reminders into your phone. When the thought pops up, deep breath, I am on time for my life. And these are some of the tools I started using to stop comparing myself to other people. The third thing is making bold moves, moving past all of the rejection, trusting your own timeline will lead you to flourishing, right? And so I feel like I was late. There I go, right? I feel like I was late to the revelation that my timeline is mine and that I needed to trust it, but I wasn't late. And it led me to a series of where my life should be. One of those things was in 2023, I went by myself on a group trip. So I connected with a group, but I went to South Africa. I went to Johannesburg with a group. It was a business networking event. And from that trip, I took a solo overnight trip to Cape Town. I toured Stellenbosch. I went to three wineries there. I had the best time. But I never would have gotten to that if I would have kept shrinking, if I would have kept comparing my life, my journey, my timeline to other people's. Once I shook that, I felt like I could fly freer, right? I felt like I could focus on what was my life. And it was me saying yes finally. But like I started off with in the beginning, it was a time period, it was probably about 8 to 10 years where I was shrinking, where I was playing down whatever I brought to the table, where I was afraid to step out, where I wasn't walking in confidence, right? Where I was allowing what I perceived as failures to make me feel like a failure and to make me shrink back. And so, for your audience, I want them to know small, consistent steps towards building their confidence, towards ignoring what they think is a failure, redefining what they think is a failure, right? You have to reimagine it, seeing your life for what it truly is and not for what you thought it should be. Those are very vital steps in flourishing, in embracing where you are, because only when you embrace where you are will you get to where you want to go. I could sit here all day wishing I had someone else's life, but I don't. If I sit here and I keep comparing myself to other people, I'm not them and they're not me, right? Often I think of that like, well, I don't have their life. They don't have my life either, right? That works in reverse, is what I'm saying. And so, an affirmation that I want to leave is that every day, in every way, I am getting better and bolder. And that these three affirmations are ones I still say to myself. These affirmations have helped me catapult my mindset. I looked at a lot of Louise Hay's work. She has just a plethora of books with the affirmations in them. You take them, of course, and you make them your own. But I did a lot of journaling through these years. I still journal. I actually journaled this morning. Like, I journal daily and I reaffirm myself and I reaffirm my own path. And I want to leave a few prompts with your audience, if that's okay. So, I want to ask you a few questions you can sit with. First, where in your life has rejection been redirection? Where in your life has rejection been redirection? And if you think about those times and get past the embarrassing feeling behind any of those rejections, you'll start to spot and see the divine redirection where the door was closed, but this different door was open for you. The next thing is, where do you need to trust your own timeline? Where do you need to trust your own timeline? And that goes back to comparison, right? So first you may experience the rejection, and now you're like, well, they're not struggling, or you're comparing yourself to their timeline. Stop and ask yourself, where should you trust your timeline? And next, what bold step could you take this week to start flourishing in who you are, right? What bold steps can you take this week or today where you will start flourishing and be bold and own your own timeline? Sit with those questions, definitely journal those questions, use them, turn them into affirmations. Anything you have to do to build your confidence, to see your timeline, and to reframe your own rejection, right? Also, I don't know if Julie can drop this quiz in the description, but I have a free
Yeah,
quiz.
absolutely. Absolutely, I can. Yeah. Oh
The
my
quiz
goodness,
is fun.
Kimberly. Yeah, so much in what you said. And that's the thing, isn't it? That often it's only with the benefit of hindsight that we can actually see that the reason that didn't work out is because it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't for us. And sometimes it's circumstances outside of ourselves, like for instance, you're being made redundant twice, and other times it's that we unconsciously sabotage something because we know deep down it isn't right for us. So somehow it kind of works out that way anyway because it just isn't meant for us. And I think, that word trust is so, so important. And sometimes that's a really challenging thing to do, to trust when, life is not the way you want it. But
Mhm.
actually, the more we can trust and, like you say, use the kind of some of the things that you suggested, like those affirmations. Can you actually just repeat those three affirmations, please, Kimberly?
Yes. Where in your life has rejection become redirection?
The three affirmations. You had three affirmations.
Oh, you don't want the questions. Okay, so the
Yeah.
affirmations. The
Yeah.
first one is I walk in divine direction for my life. The second one is I am on time for my life. And then the third one is every day in every way, I am getting better and bolder.
I love that last one particularly. And the thing about affirmations, I know you said it took a while for you to get your head around it, but sometimes it can feel kind of like it just doesn't feel like it kind of works for us. But actually, with perseverance and just repeating it and kind of just being curious about what if I could be bolder, what if I could, step out and be bigger, and it actually starts to feel different. So thank you so, so much, Kimberly. I absolutely loved what you had to share. I'm going to put all your links below. So everyone watching or listening, my links will be there as well. I really recommend that you reach out and get in touch with Kimberly. She's absolutely awesome. Kimberly, is there one last thing you want to say before we wrap up?
Just know your life is inspiring someone else to go forward and don't forget it.
That is so true. Whatever we do, even if it's just a smile, we can make such a difference. What we do has an absolute ripple effect. Thank you. Thank you again. And thank you everyone else for watching.